What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you're up to speed on the current episodes, you know that I am currently moving from Chattanooga, Tennessee, back home to New Hampshire. So as you can see behind me, there's not much left of the shop here. So I don't have anything to really work on. The Auto Union 1000 SP is up north, the bus, the Corvairs, everything's up north, including my laser machine. So for today's episode, I figured we'd jump back in time and talk about a project I had before I started the YouTube channel, but one of my favorite projects. And that was my 1973 Lada or Zhiguli 2101. Now, for as long as I can remember, I've wanted a Lada. You see them in Eastern Bloc movies, the James Bond films, they're all over the place in cinema, but I never wanted one of the late model Ladas, which were available even in Canada, but we see them all over South America, even Western Europe before they came to the North American continent. I always wanted a pre-export. I mean, when Fiat first gave up a lot of their designs to Soviet Russia, a true Iron Curtain Soviet-era Lada. Indeed, before they even called them Ladas. So in early 2018, I finally made it a point to make it over for Wörthersee, a massive show that started out as a Volkswagen show and had been going on for over 30 years in South Austria. I'd been traveling overseas every summer for a few years at this point, so I had a lot of friends in England and knew my way around for the most part. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to drive across a whole bunch of countries that I hadn't been to yet. So basically my plan for this trip was to fly to England and stay there for about a week before making the trip down to Wörthersee, so I had some time to hang out with some friends and see some sights before we started the trip. So flew to Heathrow, and day one was spent in London with my friend Cy, before ultimately making about a 3-hour drive to Buxton, where he lives. So my friend Johnny Smith from Roll Hard had made the trek up from the London area to hang out with us for a couple of days. So one night up there, we were just hanging out, talking about Eastern Bloc cars, and I'm telling him how much I've always wanted one and how much I love them. And we started talking about how you can actually find a lot of these Soviet-era cars in England because you can indeed drive there from Russia and Eastern Bloc countries. I get on Car and Classic UK, which is essentially the English European version of automotive Craigslist, and start looking around for Ladas. Well, sure enough, I find a listing for one for sale in England, but it wasn't a Soviet market only early model. It was a late 70s 2101, which at that point was also available in Western Europe, but the price was so cheap that the guys actually bullied me into calling the guy to get more information on it because they were willing to actually drive me out to look at it the following day if I decided this was something that I wanted to dive in and purchase only my second day of a 3 to 4 week trip in Europe. So I call the number and I'm greeted by a sharp Russian accent, a gentleman who can barely speak any English, who had brought this car over from Lithuania. Now this one was orange and this was not the color that I really wanted. I had always envisioned owning a red one because I feel like all the early models were all red. So I quickly find out that this car has just been sold and he's holding it for the guy who's coming from Ireland to come pick it up. So before hanging up, he said, but wait, I've got one more that I have not listed yet that I just brought over from Lithuania. Well, it's a 1973, which is early model. So this is pre-Lada 2101, right? And it's red. And he has the same asking price for this 2101 as the orange one he had listed. Now the following day was the only day I had available to go look at this. And it was about a 3-hour drive from Buxton to go look at this thing, and Johnny was willing to take me. So knowing full well that if I bought this car, I was gonna have to leave it with the owner because we were headed right to the Eurotunnel and heading into Germany the next day, and I would have to facilitate getting it shipped to a friend's place in England later on after I purchased the car. So we arrived to the place, the orange Lada is still in his driveway, and he is not trying to sell me that car. So already in my head, I'm thinking, well, if he was gonna double sell a car or possibly resell the red one that I'm there to look at, he would probably try to do that with this orange one that's still listed online. He told me it wasn't for sale, and this is getting me feeling a little bit better about this whole thing. So we follow the guy a few miles out of town to a storage unit facility where the 2101 had been sitting. He opens the door, and there it is, a pre-export full Soviet Zhiguli 2101. So he goes to his van and gets a battery and walks into the unit and puts a battery in it. And I'm thinking, all right, you just didn't have a battery in it. Then he goes to get a can of gas and he starts putting gas in it. And I'm thinking, this car's probably sat for quite a while. Had dust all over it. Just looked like it had been sitting in the storage unit for quite a while. But he gets in the car and to my surprise, the thing starts first crank and sounds great. So he backs it out so we can get a better look around the car, and I am just geeking out at this point. And if you guys have been on the channel long enough or followed me on Instagram long enough, you know how much I love weird, rare cars, just oddball cars, but cars that also look good. All the instrumentation is in Russian. And to me, this was just the coolest thing because it's such an alien feeling car. There's no English anywhere on this car. Even the badge on the back of the car was in Russian font. So I decided to buy the car. And I also decided to PayPal him friends and family for some reason. And if you're unfamiliar with PayPal, PayPaling someone friends and family means you have no buyer's protection. You are paying them in full, and then they can just do whatever they want with the money. And to this day, I have no idea why I did that. The 2.9% transaction fee for the goods and services and buyer protection would have been under $100. I shake his hand. He gives me a little laminated Lithuanian registration thing as if that proved my ownership of the car. So to make the whole thing feel even more sketchy, he's keeping the car and the keys because I now have to facilitate shipping because we're bailing out of the country. So we head off on down to Wales the next day to prep for our trip into mainland Europe, all the while stressing out that I may have just given up a few $1,000s and will not see it ever again, nor the car. So luckily my friend Dean, who we met up with in Wales, shares a unit with a good friend Simon, who has a ramp truck and was willing to drive the 3.5 hours one way to go pick the Lada up the next day. So I paid Simon and we headed off to Dover to get on the Eurotunnel into France.
You see what I mean about a Porsche?
Yeah.
You never get it on.
As we're loading the Eurotunnel train with Dean's E32 7 Series, he gets a series of photos from Simon with the Lada on the back of his ramp truck, and the anxiety washed away from me in a tidal wave. So now I know the car is safe. It's in Simon's possession, it's on his ramp truck, it's headed back to Wales to spend time at Dean's house until I can figure out when I'm shipping this thing home to America and how I'm going to afford it. So we made the 12-hour drive to Cologne, Germany. We met up with my good friend Marcel and the rest of our Germany crew to gather up for the next 10 to 12-hour leg down beyond Munich, through the Alps, down into South Austria to Wörthersee. So I'm really grateful I made it a point to go in 2018 and experience Wörthersee at the height of its insanity. So we left Wörthersee heading back to Cologne. We stopped in Stuttgart to see the Porsche Museum and the Mercedes Museum, which were both completely overwhelming. Saw some more incredible things in Germany and Poland before making my way home. So I was able to facilitate shipping of the Lada coming to America only a couple months after getting home. And again, that was thanks to Simon, who was able to transport it from Wales all the way to the Southampton port in England, get it on a boat, where it made its first trip across the Atlantic Ocean over to America. Made the 6-hour drive down to New Jersey to the port to pick it up. My good friend Zach DePiero, who a lot of you have seen on the channel with the TDR Harlequin, was there to take a lot of photos of picking it up because this was the first car that I'd ever imported to America. She's all loaded up. Ready to go. So we've got the Lada, it's on the trailer, it's headed home. Somebody at the port left the key on, which killed the battery. My jump pack was also dead, and we could barely push it to start it because the brakes are kind of sticky on it, so we got it though. Got back to New Hampshire with the car, got it in my dad's shop, and immediately started taking the thing apart. Now, I've always wanted to bag one of these cars, so I worked with Bag Riders and Aero Performance on this project and got right to custom building my own air suspension setup for this car. But amidst all the custom suspension work I was doing, I also wanted to lightly restore the car. All the plastic lenses, the grill badge, all of that were all super oxidized and just worn out and old looking. My friend Farid from Moscow and Valent from the Ukraine both sent me new old stock parts for a 2101, still in the package. Marker lenses, tail lights, a brand new grill badge, even an AutoVAZ 2101 owner's manual, like an original 2101 pre-export Russian owner's manual for this car. Stuff that I completely nerd out over. So while the car was taken apart, I started to put a lot of these new old stock parts on the car, stuff that still had CCCP stampings on them. It just felt like a time capsule car of an era that no longer existed. I had bought some 14-inch 3-piece Epsilons for this project. I had actually bought them before the Lada came stateside, and I had them all taken apart, and I was getting ready to refinish them and get them powder coated. My friend Jason in Maine powder coated them gold for me, and I polished the lips up, made them look brand new. I even utilized my laser machine to take the old Epsilon center caps and make a 2-color acrylic laser cut, laser engraved Lada center cap out of these. It was a pretty straightforward air suspension project. I didn't chop the car to bits. I basically just notched certain things to get more drop out of the car. I left the stock control arms for the most part, so spindle and control arms were still AutoVAZ. The rear end in these cars are a straight axle 4-link coil spring suspension, so it was relatively easy to build airbag brackets with a universal airbag and run shorter shocks. And I ultimately made an adjustable panhard bar so I could dial in where the car aired out. With a straight axle and 4-link with a panhard bar, you get axle movement separate from your body. So I utilized an adjustable panhard bar, so when I was aired out, I had the axle centered on the body, so the wheel fitment was the same on both sides. Working with the guys at Bag Riders and utilizing Airlift Performance components, I built the trunk setup in like a semi-hidden setup. In the trunk, above the axle, was this elevated section of the floor of the trunk, which really would be difficult to put stuff on anyway. And it was up under the parcel shelf, so that's where I put all of my management, and custom made the 3H manifold top plate to be a Bag Rider's sign. So I designed these acrylic arms that would come off of a custom manifold plate and held a 2-color acrylic Bag Rider's sign that kind of poked out from underneath the tank. It was really cool. It was kind of a side project. I wanted to make something visible for Bag Riders when you open the trunk, and this was kind of like a cool anchor point to do it from, mounting it right to the manifold itself. So the car is outside, it's on air suspension. It even looks pretty cool on the factory Lada wheels. But then I put the Epsilons on and the whole look of the car was changed. As most of you know, the wheels definitely make the car. Now, once the Epsilons are on, I dove down a rabbit hole project of something I really wanted to do for years leading up to this. And that was make my own turbofans. I'm a huge motorsport nerd and I love the look of some of the vintage race cars with the BBS turbofans for brake cooling. And I thought, maybe with my laser machine, I'll take a stab at designing my own myself. So once I got a mounting plan together for actually mounting them to the Epsilons, I was able to move from the inside out. Once I got the overall dimensions and shape I wanted on these things, I started to work on the face. This is gonna be laser engraved into the material of the turbofan itself and be permanent. I got a lot of photos of the Lada before I put the actual faces on the turbofans, and even blank. It had a really cool look to it. Then when I finished them, I put the faces on. So one was red with white engraving and the other was white with red engraving. So I kind of wanted to do an alternate look that way. And that's when my good friend Josh Garcia from Revival Motoring Magazine called me and said he wanted to feature the Lada in issue 2 of his print magazine. But shortly thereafter, I acquired a set of Dream BBS Motorsport wheels. A set of 15-inch 1987 BBS E76s. Magnesium centers with aluminum barrels and lips with the sealing ring in the middle. So I was moving from 14s up to 15s on the car, but I felt like that it would really fill out the wheel wells much better on the Lada. So Josh and I decided to reshoot the car and use the photos with the E76 in the magazine as well. If you are a channel lifer and you've been here since day one on the YouTube channel, you'll know that the very first episode on this channel was me going to shoot the Lada with Josh for Revival Motoring magazine. After years of all of you guys on Instagram trying to push me into the YouTube space, as well as a few friends who had been on YouTube a long time and had done really well with it, I had finally decided to start a YouTube channel. And the day that I went to reshoot the car with Josh was episode 1 on this channel. So I no longer own the car. I know most of you know that. Otherwise, you would have seen it on the channel for sure. So much like most of the cars I've owned in the past, I sold it to move on to the next project. If I had it my way, I'd be able to keep them all, house them in some huge building, and be able to share their stories for years to come. But I've always said I wanted to do a 2101 build video here on the channel. I hope you guys have enjoyed the story of this car and the things I did to it. I will own another Lada in the future. I really wanted a 2102 Estate before I found the 2101. As you already know, I bought the 2101 spur of the moment while in England. But a 2102 wagon is the dream Lada. So if any of you guys watching know of a pre-export Zhiguli 2102 Estate or an early model Niva, please let me know, because I would highly entertain one of those as being a project on the channel in the future. Well, that's it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for watching and for all of your support. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. We're getting this move done. We're almost done. By next week, we're gonna be moved up to New Hampshire and we're gonna finish building out the new shop. I'm so happy you guys have enjoyed the build series on the shop, because I haven't had anything else to document, and that's a whole lot of work. So we've got a few more episodes left on that before we get back on the 1000 SP, before we start working on the 52 cab over and the bus build. Those 2 projects are coming soon. So thank you guys again for watching. We will see you in the next episode. All right, so much work to do.